We thank you very much for tuning in on SpiceFM and also following the conversation online, SpiceFM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Let us begin with the day's proverb. City?
Yes, usichezee maji yaliyotulia.
Usichezee maji yaliyotulia. Yaoge.
Yatazame kwa makini.
Ukiona maji yametulia kwa karai, oga.
Na hiyo maji?
Hapana, na karai.
Usilenge.
Wow. Okay.
Usichezee maji yaliyotulia. If you were to translate this into English, what would it be?
Do not disregard still water.
Do not disregard still water.
Yes.
Do not disregard still waters. Still waters run deep. Utazama. Utazama wewe.
Utaangamia.
Okay, let's have a conversation about activism and women's role and experiences in activism. Joining us for this conversation are two ladies. One of them is in the studio, the other one joins us via video link. Rachael Mwikali, human rights defender, Pan-African feminist, community organizer, gender justice, sexual and reproductive health rights activist.
Title.
Where? What else are you?
Or not?
Sheesh. Welcome to the Situation Room.
The other thing that I am is made in Madare.
Made in Madare.
Yeah.
Okay, let me add that. Made in
Authentic.
Made in Madare. Okay. What else?
Board member of Amnesty
Where?
International of Kenya.
That's a good one.
Youth Advisory Board, Denmark in Kenya.
What's that?
Like in the advisory board that advises Denmark on their development process, and also their Minister for Development Cooperation. Yeah.
You do very many things.
No.
That shows you're passionate.
Hold. We are Denmark. Let's move on. Where else are you?
Young Women Leadership Institute.
There you go.
Right.
And we effect East Africa.
Oh,
We effect the work with cooperative and farmers.
right.
Yeah, we had a conversation with them last week.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yeah.
What else?
Happy Proud Feminists.
Hey. Well
And a woman
done.
human rights defender. Title the mob.
Kabisa. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante.
We're glad to have you on the show with us.
Yeah.
And thank you. That is the hot seat. Make yourself comfortable.
Asante.
The lady who's been on the hot seat beforehand has avoided it today. Is just choosing to operate from far. Is Njeri Mwangi. Njeri, good morning. Your phone is off, Njeri. Okay, so hopefully we'll get you shortly. Njeri is an activist, a road safety ambassador, and also a co-founder of Power 254. And she joins us on the line. Are you there now? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can
we can.
now.
Okay.
Welcome
Hi.
to the Situation Room.
Asante sana.
Are you well?
No, I'm not. Sorry, I couldn't be there.
Pole. Quick recovery to you. Njeri is an activist, a road safety ambassador, and a co-founder of Power 254, and also one of the people who come in very, very strongly on the film that we're about to discuss, and this is Softy the Film. Softy the Film, remember when it was launched last year, we had a conversation with Njeri and Boniface Mwangi in the studio. It's they're the ones. The film is by Boniface and Njeri, and it follows the activism journey of Boniface Mwangi and Njeri Mwangi. And now we're talking about, so what is the role of women in activism? Let's first talk about the film itself. So we understand that you've won a couple of awards, this film, Njeri. Congratulations for this.
Thank you.
You can tell people how many awards you've won and where.
It's won quite a bunch of films, but correction, it's not my film. It's a film about our lives.
Yes.
The film is by Sam Soko and Tony Kamau, the producer. So it's just a film that follows, like you said correctly, our lives. Sorry. It's won the human rights. It's won a bunch of films, actually. It's the main one I can say is the It was an Oscars contender last year or this year. But it didn't make it, but it was, it was nominated in the Oscars. And that's, I would say, the greatest achievement that it has attained so far, but it has won many other festival awards in many festivals across the world because it's a human rights film, basically.
Njeri, tell us about them, please. Tell us about these awards. Tell us about these awards, please.
So the film is about an activist, my husband and myself. And the reason it has won many awards is because a lot of people around the world identify with it. They identify with it because they see their activists, they see their partners, they see their families, they see the struggle, really, of these activists for the things that they're struggling for, because it's for the good of their citizens. And so the reason that it has been acknowledged and across the world is for that reason, because people identify with it as citizens, as partners, as activists. They resonate with it, and as citizens mainly because of what we should be doing but are not doing. Like, how can we be better citizens of the world, of the countries that we live in, and champion for the changes that we want to see actively. So I'd say that's the main reason why.
Njeri, you said something very interesting, and I think also we'll be able to bring in Mwikali at this point, just maybe after you answer this question, is that it's a movie about your lives, but then there's certain themes that have obviously come out as a result of doing this film. Boniface is well featured here, and then it would have seemed as though you all as family members then came in playing secondary roles. But then when you look at this very clearly, then there's a distinct role that you play as an individual in this entire story, which then brings in this theme of women as activists. So looking at the journey that you've been through and your family, your husband as an activist, and then you playing a support role, and then you also playing a direct primary role in all of this. Where and how does the importance of women in activism come through?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. I think there are different roles that we play. And Mwikali will tell you from her experience. But from my experience, you don't see me in the front line because Boniface has taken that, is in the front line. We are a couple and we have a family, right? And so for Bonnie to be out in the streets, the reason he's fighting is because he wants his children to live in a better country. He wants this country to be better for his children to grow in. He wants to be comfortable to walk in the streets. He wants to be able to go for a party at night, to go for a concert. He wants there to be activities at night that people can attend without frustration, without fear of arrest. And so the way you see me in this film is completely different. People are used to seeing Bonnie in the front line. People don't know at what cost. They don't know what his wife goes through. They don't know what his children go through. I'd say we have overlooked the contribution of the family generally in activism, because if you ask children of activists around the world, not just my family, not just in Kenya even, if you ask children of activists, they will tell you that the sacrifices they've had to bear and the pains they have been through are numerous. So it has been overlooked, and it's something that should not be. We may not have to know and say all the time because we don't see them. Who you don't see in the front line does not mean they don't exist.
Sure.
There's a very vital role that we play. When Bonnie comes home, before he leaves home, when he's preparing, why he's doing this, you see him there, but that does not mean that we are not playing that similar responsibility. The reason we're holding back we're holding the children, we're making sure that the home is safe for him to come home to, for the children to be in, for us to survive in, is an important role, because where else would he be going? Where would he be coming from? Why would he even be in the streets if he didn't care about the family? Why would we accept for him to be in the streets if it was not going to be gaining for us all, you see? So we have overlooked and disregarded the responsibility or the role of women in, like, such as myself, in activism. And it doesn't need to be, because take me away, take the children away. I don't know what Bonnie would be doing and how he'd be able to do it. Maybe he would. I'm not saying that he is doing this because I am there. But I know that he's doing this because of the support that he's received from myself and the children. If it wasn't, then he'd probably withdraw and decide to do something different. So we can't continue to ignore the role that women play, because it's quite critical and it's vital. And I think our contribution is equally great, if not greater. Just because it's invisible does not mean that it doesn't exist, and that's something that we should all acknowledge.
And Florence, it's the same thing that, Rachael, it's the same conversation that we have as we continue the conversation with you. And this is, as we're talking about the role of women in activism, like Njeri is saying, there are those in the front line. There are those who play a very, very big role. They are not in the front line, but they're actually also doing a lot. Where do you lie? Are you in the front line, or are you in the supporting role? Are you those who look at, overall picture, policy and all?
I think on my side, I'll say my kind of role is very intersectional. Like, I'm in the front line, I'm in the supports, I'm in the policy trying to push. But most people will identify with me being in the front line. And I really like this conversation, because this is a conversation that we've been trying to push, where the story of women human rights defenders are visibilized even within the sector of civil society. Because you realize most of the time, the people even who come here at Spice, it's a male comrade, not the women human rights defender who are in the front line. But you get to realize it goes back also to the history, even during the Mau Mau. Like, there were a lot of women like Muthui and Njeri who played a critical role. But because of patriarchy and systematic structure that work against us women, it becomes harder for our role to be seen. And also it comes the same, even like me being born in Madare, raised in Madare, and having also women who are still in the same space. You find the more also you are in the grassroots, it's hard your voice to be heard. But for this particular film, what I was really happy about is also the role that it brought different activists together, especially also the women human rights defender. Like, I'll quote one that also we live in the same area, Mabatini area, Emily Kwamboka. When you see in the film, she's very clear, tunataka revolution. And many people not recognize that, but that song also was sung even during when Unga revolution was being pushed. And you see, this is a woman from Mashinani. So it's very critical, especially now, to invest on women human rights defenders who are in the front line. Because also, if you see the risks that get involved when it comes to our life, and recognizing also that we are not homogeneous. Majority of us, even women in general, we are not homogeneous. It's the same with women human rights defenders. But you get it becomes worse if also you identify as a woman human rights defender who is a feminist. Like, who is also like challenging power even within different spaces. And you realize also, like, I want also to add what Njeri, she was saying. Boniface did it better because Njeri was there. Like, Njeri played a critical role. And that's why I like to say that we need to remove even the word Boniface from Njeri. Because also, if we say Njeri, Boniface's wife, it takes the identity of Njeri and her role within the particular film. And that's why it's very critical when also we are looking at this level of intersectionality. You recognize that majority of these women human rights defenders, they are also mothers. They are also sisters. They are also individual in their own identity. If, for example, if the coin would have been flipped, if Njeri was the protagonist, would Boniface also, who is my comrade, play the same role? You'll find the vulnerability of Njeri would have been more higher compared to Boniface. Because that's like our lived experience. You find like vulnerability, the fact you exist as a woman, even like when you go to the streets, first before police arrest you, they'll harass you. I have experienced that they'll harass you. And then also like in terms of also like the criminalization. And you would see even like quoting our former comrade who died, Caroline Mwata, and may her soul rest in peace. People are willing to criminalize her on other aspects that the narrative that was being driven and not looking at our contribution to this country in terms of fighting the social justice, in terms of fighting EJs, in terms of fighting for human rights for all. Because you realize as women human rights defenders, we have, we are not saying because you're a woman, you're defending only women's rights. The others who are defending land, the others who are defending democracy, the others who are defending sexual reproductive health and rights. So if we want to ensure like this contribution are heard, it's also where now the role of media comes, giving it publicity, visibility, like the way we are here. Like it shows in this country, there are women human rights defenders doing fantastic work, but the story are never heard or publicized. And then also it comes back to patriarchy. Most of the time, if it's a guy, it'd be like I. But women generally, the way we are nurtured and socialized, it's we, not I. We don't take that credit of I. And that's why when you ask me, how would you identify? I was like, let me also take the learning from how it works. When men say, I'm this and this, I should not be feeling shy of what I've worked off to be where I am. And that's what I was like proudly saying, I sit in this and this and this, but you find for you to sustain that you have to work extra harder than the guys.
So those are some of the challenges then that you face. I mean, even before we get to that next question, from what you've said, they're clearly challenges. Because when we hear, maybe it's a social construct already in our minds that when you hear activism, then you think immediately that there's a man out there and he's fighting and he's saying, you know. But then when we hear a woman as an activist, and this may be for you, Njeri, as well, you hear there's a woman out in the streets and she's just making noise, right?
Yeah.
And that she could actually be doing something else.
Where are her children?
She should be at home taking care of her children or taking care of her family. Why is she out here running the risk of being arrested? Interesting that you talk about also then being harassed before they even come to. So what are some of the challenges that you face as well as you, Njeri?
So I think to add one, the fact also we are vocal and looking, we are coming in a structure and this retrogressive culture that if you're a vocal woman, you're told, quote unquote, as an African woman, should not be vocal. And you're like, excuse me first. The fact I'm black, I have no apology. So you find even most of the time our families, sometimes they're not there for us. They think we are mad. They think we don't look proper. The same as the society. They think we don't look proper because you're speaking truth to power, which traditionally is supposed to be male-oriented. And for the fact we have chosen to speak truth to power, it gets harder. Even within our own love lives. Like, you find, like, this is an example, even someone was like, when nakukatiaje naona bishana na polisi. You're like, at the same time, you're like, but also I have my own love life. Right. I have my own life. It doesn't mean because I'm fighting for this country, sifai kukatiwa na kupenda na kupendana. I mean. And then also I think even exile is a tricky one. And if you see in Softy, it's not easy. I've been there. And then also that's where family also comes and asks you questions. Instead of doing this activity, which also does not have pay, and something. And then also like, but also one thing we need to recognize is also like our allies and supporters, they play a critical role. But there are moments even psychologically, you'll be like, what am I fighting for? But still you're like, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling I want to give up. But at the same time, you're feeling you want a better future. Because if you realize most of the activists, including Njeri, even Boniface, and even most of us, even human beings, there are things we do because we have gone through a struggle that is driving us to push whatever we are pushing. But also at the same time, I want to acknowledge that we should not go through a struggle for you to be an activist. You can be an activist. It's like, you can't tell women, for you to be a feminist or activist, you should have gone through violation. No. All of us should play a critical role to ensure like it's there. The other thing that has been also clear and challenge is when you are arrested and then the cases are being transferred from different parts of the country and you can't access those. Like if you're arrested in Nairobi, your case is being taken, let's say in Wajir, you have never been to Wajir. And then the logistic part of it, of cases and everything.
It's difficult.
It's difficult. And then you are like, this activism because you want to see a change. And also you realize not all activists are in organizations or civil society or in community organization. They're activists who are individual. So you find as much as you're a woman, human rights defender, and you're in an individual space, by the time you come also to raise your voice, and if, for example, you're not visible, it becomes harder.
How would you define activism?
For me, I'll be like anybody who stands up for any human rights injustice or women rights injustice.
Njeri, how would you define activism?
I would say it's an active citizen, somebody who does not allow injustice, stand in the face of injustice and remain silent.
So essentially, if I am to hear you right by your definitions, because your definitions are similar, what you're saying is that when you look at the struggles that women have had, not in posing certain pertinent governance issues or matters to do with equality, but simply living and getting on with their lives and overcoming hurdles, societal norms that don't actually give them a fair shake. Would you then argue that by and large in this country, many women that you come across are actually activists?
Yes.
By and large, yes, because
Yes.
a lot of women have been standing up for what they believe in. Something that, even when you think about the wave that was there during the what's it called, My Dress, My Choice. It was middle class women with the women from grassroots who just decided they've had it. Enough is enough of being harassed by matatus and nothing is being done. Yeah, it was not people who come from an organization. And I think something that has been completely distorted or a poor view given is that activism is work. No one gets paid to go to the street. Nobody. Mwikali has told you, it's not a paid job. Activists are just ordinary Kenyans who are fed up with the system or the way things are going, and they choose to do something about it. And that's why maybe we find that we're sort of not as many, because people think it's something that you have to stop doing what you do for a living and come and do. Yet it's not a paid job. So for me, an active citizen, somebody who does not remain quiet in the face of injustice, whatever that injustice may be, it could be your place of work, it could be your church, it could be your school, it could be your community, anywhere. Wherever you are, you see injustice and you're like, no, this can't go on. And you raise your voice. But the more people raise their voice, the more injustice loses its space. It loses its power. But if it's one person, like Mwikali said, you shout until you're so, until people call you crazy and mad and people ignore you. You're branded, all these kinds of things. And one of the challenges that has been there is that women, when they are in that space, the same as men, fighting for what they believe in. What media comes out and says is what they're dressed like, where they're coming from. They don't stay with the issue. And I remember when Mwangi died, the things I heard about her, like, really, guys, like, do you not know what this woman is about? Do you not know why? Can you say why she was killed? Even if it's being investigated, or it will never be said, can we say what she stood for? Because that's what you hear about men, that they're fighting for this. This is why they were killed, whether it has been, it's alleged or it's been proven, right? And that is one of the greatest challenges, that women, when you come out in the street to fight for something, their names and brands have been put on women that defeats completely why they were fighting for what they were fighting for. And if that woman is not dead, when she goes back, she's wondering, why am I even doing this? Yet she cannot remain quiet in the face of injustice.
The conversation continues with Rachael, Mwikali and Njeri Mwangi. The role and experiences of women in activism. And as we were taking the break, Njeri, you were explaining, the kind of challenges that women go through. In your own experience, we're now talking about Softy the Film and what it captured. Are there times when, of course, as an individual, as you're going through all this journey of activism, there are points where you are low, when you actually start questioning yourself, what am I doing? Is it, to what end am I doing all these things? Now, you as yourself, you are experiencing this low. Maybe that's a point when your partner, Bonnie, is on a high. How do you balance those two? Or are there times when you're both low and you were just waking up and, yes, my dear, what are we doing?
Ikai.
Si tuende tukalime. Si tufanye kitu ingine. People look at so and so. They are living their life okay. And yes, here we are.
All you do and all you receive is ingratitude and whiners and complainers who keep prescribing things that they can never do, but they think you should do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Njeri, the question is, how do you encourage yourself and encourage each other through this journey?
It may seem, like that's all we see and hear. People complaining, and we see the pain and we hear it. People call, people text. And yes, there's a lot of that. And then, of course, there's what you see in the news, all the corruption, all the injustices, without even being told anything by anyone. So there's all that. But then there's also young people out there who are really believing in change and are really putting themselves on the line because of what they believe in. And there are many. And there are young people in unis, there are young people in the streets. You can hear there's bursts and rays of hope all around. if you care to listen, if you care to look, they're there. And then we look at our children and we're like, imagine they have to live in a better country. They have to live in a better world than this. And we have the power to do something. We cannot promise that we will deliver it, but we can try, yeah? And they see us try. They see us, they hear us, and they see those around us that are also trying. So for me, I'd say even when I am up and Bonnie's down, sometimes we remember why we started this. We remember why it's important. And be as it may, there are times that we may both be down. Somehow one of us just speaks and says, it's important. It makes a difference. Even though it may not seem like right now, it does make a difference. Eventually, something will give. We may experience it, we may see it, but maybe our kids will. And even if nothing does happen in our time, in the long run, you will see it and people will talk about it and something will happen because we're not the only ones doing anything, something about it. There's many people doing something and it feels like a drop in the ocean, but it's happening.
But also, we have distinct roles as human beings, especially in a family unit, and those come in sometimes naturally, sometimes just because of how we're brought up. Now, there's a role of a woman that a woman plays in keeping the man on the straight and narrow and upright, and reminding the man that you have to provide and to protect this family. Now, I'm imagining there are times when you'd wake up and you look at Bonnie and you're thinking, boss, so-and-so doing this and the other, so-and-so doing this and the other. Their family seems to be on a track of some sort of stability. What are you doing? Are there such moments where you sit back and that, yes, you're an activist, but then also you've got that motherly, nurturing instinct where you're thinking about the future of your children? And you look and start asking yourself, is this the future that we are going to bequeath our children in terms of as a family unit?
Eric, interestingly, I've never been one to compare. Maybe when I was young I did. But I look at where I am now and what I want, and I listen to what Bonnie wants, and we want the same things. We may not get them in the usual standard way that everybody's getting what they want. We may not even get what we want as soon as we can because of the path that we've chosen. But we're proud of ourselves. We go to bed and wake up knowing that we're doing the right thing. Yeah. Our children may complain about a few things, but we try to give our children also the best that we can. And where they want more, we explain why things cannot be the way they want. Yeah. We all want many things, but we all don't get everything we want when we want it. And we've taught them. That. So even though there are times we just look around and we're like, man, things don't have to be this way. We can close shop and, do something else or just ignore, because it's not about doing something else. We both are creatives and we have jobs. We have things that we do for a living. We could choose to close this curtain and say that, whatever is happening continues to happen, which it does, and we are not going to do anything about it. Just close our eyes and just live like everybody else. But then we just can't. We're not those people.
Sure.
We don't know how to do that, and we don't want to try.
Mwikali, who protects you then? Because even as you say this, there are different roles that people play, and I think one of the first things that you said was that everybody can be an activist. Sure, but not everybody will be in the front line, right? There's support roles that other people can play, and community comes in very strongly here. So what role can community play then in protecting or providing the necessary support for you? Because the way in which you fought the struggle is not necessarily the way I may have been able to, CT may have been able to, but how can you be supported for this cause, which people will find important, but then may not be able to take on the same role that you do?
That's a very good question. And I really like the way you have asked that, because that's something that as women human rights defenders, because the reason why I'm using women human rights defender, most of the time people will forget affirming that word.
Sure.
They'll just say, like they have said, women in activism. But there's a distinction, women human rights defenders. So, you find most of the time it's not only community, it's the country at large will want to stand in solidarity with us.
Yeah.
Especially when you are being targeted, instead of them saying, oh, donor funding, blah, 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 they should be able to say, this is the role and the amazing work you people are doing, and we are here in solidarity. When we ask them to come on the streets, or when we ask them to spread the message also on social media or digital spaces, when we are demanding for justice, they should not shy and keep quiet. Because if, for example, you shy and keep quiet, it makes even Mwikali get burned out and many of Mwikali. And then you get also exposed a lot to different forms of violence. Because the fact I am an activist, I'm also a woman. I'm also a human being. So you find the layers of violence increase. But one thing also I need to recognize, because locally within the Mathare, I sit under Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders. For me, even for us doing the fantastic work we do, it's because of community support. I can't discredit that. It's because of community support when we say there's no water, what do we do collectively? They'll be like, we have tried to talk with the chief, or we have tried to talk with the Nairobi Water, or anybody to try to have a dialogue, but they have failed to listen. So the only language they can understand, we close Juja Road. So we don't usually start with closing the roads. You try first to engage. When they fail to engage, and then you're like, which is a better language you understand? When we make things zikayansansi, that's where we come on board. But at the same time, also recognizing, even some of our courses, the way Njeri said, a lot of activists, they are not financed with people. I need to talk about it. And you find sometimes community come and contribute the same way they contribute to church. The same way you take your Sadaka on Sunday. It's the same way even within our organizing, we're like very clear. If you believe in the cause we are doing, could you please contribute for you to be part of this cause? And I've seen it, like last week we were doing like a Pussy Power Festival. And all of you saw it on Twitter. It was through the public that we managed to raise even around 300,000. You see, now Kenyans are learning and people on investing on our own. So I think it's very clear and very critical that as country, as community, we learn financing our own courses. And stop asking what Mwikali had said when you say, where is Njeri or where is Mombi? But the moment you contribute, it means you have contributed to that struggle. Then the other thing I think the public and the community needs to do, opening opportunities and platforms for activists. Despite me, Mwikali, being an activist, I have other skills. Because you realize with this work, when you ask about the challenge, we get blacklisted in spaces. We get whitelisted in jobs or spaces. Because you want to have an income, but someone will say, if I employ you, I'll have trouble with the government. I don't want. Ama, you'll bring a
even the organization, you're going to bring your activism.
So you find it's very important when you utilize, when you see a skill in an activist or a woman, especially a woman activist, invest on it, tap on it. Like the way, if, for example, we are good at articulation issue, the way you articulate, tell like some of them, come here, you position yourself in terms of pushing the agenda. Because also if you realize in Wikipedia, a lot of women activists are not there. Majority are male activists. So if you are giving them a credibility space like Spice, it's easy even to have a source reference of their story. And then people know, like editor does this in Kibra, and Njeri does this in this and this space. So it's very critical to do that. But I'll insist, finance our own activists here. It feels bad when you see us being celebrated outside and not in our country.
Sure.
To be honest, it feels bad. It's good, but it feels bad when you see people who are given like Shuja awards, blah, blah, blah. They are not even people who are fighting for this country. And especially if you're a young woman, it's even tougher.
Mwikali, speak to what is often said whenever you see women going out into politics, women now in activism, women don't support women.
I disagree. And that's also, I disagree with your first statement of protection. In this lighter note, that women, we are always together. That is one thing you can't take away. And you can also like affirm that if your child doesn't have food, you're able to say, I have this packet of unga, I can share even ideas. But because also we can't also like disagree to this point, majority of us in our society, both male, women, we are raised in this patriarchal system that we've been socialized that it's only when we are firm to certain traditional norms that will look proper. And that's why it comes back. If you're a loud woman, people will be like, oh, Mwikali, but you know, nani atakuoa, nani atakujia, but you're like, marriage is achievement, but also want to have a partner, you see. But also it's very clear that we really affirm that we have also women who protect their own families globally and in this continent. And that's what, when you ask the question of the women also who speak out, but they don't call themselves activists. Some, they know they are activists, but the risk that comes with the word is what majority will be like, but you know, I'm also in casual work, you know, I'm having a child, you know, I've seen Mwikali is vocal, is visible, getting all this risk. What about me? So the whole thing for me, I would say women were always there for each other. It's just a matter of also understanding how patriarchy works. And I'll say it in Kiswahili, and the misogyny from odume atasubi ya kiume venye inafanya kazi. But at the same time, acknowledging that we live to unlearn the things that are not good. Even Mwikali did not wake up and affirm and know this is the right thing, this is a bad thing. But because of also like the way I was socialized, I was like, there are things that I feel they are not okay and they are not right. And I should stop talking about it, or I should change my way around thinking around them.
You know, this conversation, we're coming to the end of the show, but it sounds like it's just begun, actually.
We need more time.
Because the sort of thing that I would like to ask, I will not ask because time constraints. The thing that concerns me, though, is how do you mitigate against the labeling, which is in part of the problems or the hindrance or the barriers that one faces? Because you come into a space that other people have preceded you, predominantly male, but the reputation that comes with that tag, activism, for most people is something they want to take a few steps back from, not move towards.
Yeah, I hear you. And I hear you, and it's a concern, but I'm happy with the emerging new voices of young people and young women. Things are shifting. But I'll agree with you in terms of every space has its own challenge. Even media has its own challenge. And it's very important. That's why when I kept on insisting on community organizing, that the activism should be based on different levels. But at the same time, we need to agree activism evolve. Like I'll be moving from talking Madare issues to now national issues to now global issues. But it does not mean I've changed my own authenticity of my organizing. 1 minute on the street, the other minute in the boardroom. And that's why, like, if you hear the spaces I sit in, I'm set, like, sometimes you see spaces you're like, I'll not want to be part of them, but having an access to that space, our issues are going to be had. Having an access and opportunity to sit in decision-making table, whether is it in politics, whether is it into spaces that are more in policy level, we're able to put our voice in. But the other thing also I need to acknowledge is that there are a lot of also corruption. And there are a lot of also like people getting within the space to come either to make it hard and ash. But also we need to understand the distinction. There is someone who is employed in an institution that is working 8 to 5 in a human rights institution. Whether you're a man or a woman. And there is this activist who's not employed to do that. And it's not bad to be employed. And that's the thing, even I'm very clear, that we need to stop romanticizing poverty in activist life, especially women human rights defenders' life. We are fighting for a good life. Why would you say you want Mwikali akae kwa aluminium apartment all the time? Because we are fighting for, like, let's say good housing. We are fighting for access to sexual reproductive health and rights, because in slums you're seeing women dying because of unsafe abortion. I wouldn't want it. I could have been a statistic, but I don't want women to be a statistic. So it's very clear that when people come to push those agenda they are pushing, there is a reason. And I'll give you a good example. When we started End Femicide KE, during Justice for Sharon, a lot of people bashed us. They use the moral card versus the law card. And you're like very clear, any form of violence should not be excused. People thought we were mad, but finally the country came and have a discussion. And it was women human rights defenders who were pushing this agenda. Because it can happen to me. And now it comes back to narrative and even language. And I like the way you're saying, but also we are trying so much, the new generation, to bridge that gap of intersectionality. But struggle equal. There's struggle within a struggle. Like any other space. So unapigana huku nje na pia unapigana huko ndani. But it's every space. even in this country, there's a struggle even in leadership. But the thing is, we can't leave acknowledging the role women human rights defenders do. So my challenge to you, even Spice and Standard Media Group, give more visibility to women human rights defenders. When you call people from civil society, how many women activists do you call? Even leaders of civil society. I'm saying an example.
Many.
Yeah.
A majority.
It's a whole
Let's
other
conclude the
conversation,
conversation.
that's for sure.
Let's conclude the conversation. Njeri, come in here. And also, as we are concluding this conversation, what message would you give? There are many people who would be listening there who want to be activists. And like you said, an activist is an active citizen. So they want to be active in whatever space they're in. But then they lack the courage, or they lack the platforms, or they just don't know where or how to start. What would you tell them?
Wow, that's an easy one, I'd say. I think we see things that should not be the way they are. We are in the midst of a lot of things that are not sitting right with us. But then we want someone to do something about it. And sometimes someone does something about it. The problem usually is we leave that person to run the whole mile by themselves and then come and say, Sawa, it's okay now. But that should not be the case. We need to join in causes everywhere around us in the things that we want to see something done about. In the things that we want to see something done about. And that's not hard to do. It just takes that one action, that one small action. And then it will be another small action and another. It's many small actions that make all the difference. So whoever you are, wherever you are, there's nothing too small. Whether it's contributing, and like Mwikali well said, there's many levels of activism. There are people who are in the front line. There are people who are in boardrooms, and there are people. We are all in different places. So identify where you are, and then give it your all. If you're in that boardroom, then fight like there's no tomorrow. Yeah. And again, maybe the word I'm using is not right. It's not about fight. It's not. It's a struggle because there are things there's a status quo that has been maintained over the years, and that's what we're trying to change, and that's not easy to do. So man, woman, wherever you are, even child, there are people, there are kids in schools that can see something that is going wrong. It doesn't have to be a war. It doesn't have to be a fight like that.
Thank you very much for joining us, ladies. Njeri, Mwangi, and Rachael Mwikali. Let me just plug in where Softy is now going out and showing in Nairobi today, the 14th day of December, Tuesday. It's showing at Ndugu Society of Kenya, Mathare.
Yes.
And then tomorrow it will be again in Kayole 2 Community Center. So look out for Softy. It's coming out to wherever you are.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.